Welcome to Signal Theory. In this video, we're going to take a look at the REVV D40. We're going to show you how it sounds in a variety of different settings. Guitar direct in like I am right now, running pedals into the front of it, running it in like a hybrid rig with a Line 6 Helix because it can do a lot of cool digital things that are built into it. We'll talk about all that. We're also going to have a brief discussion around the topic, did REVV build like a modern day Dumble? That name Dumble has a lot of connotation when it comes to the guitar playing community. But there's some stuff about this amp that's pretty special, so we'll talk about that. All of this stuff is chapter markered down below, so you can hop around in this video if you'd like. We also have presets and captures based on this amplifier available at signaltheoryaudio.com. Again, linked below. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Okay, enough. Let's listen to it. Specs about the D40. It is a 2-channel amplifier in the Dynamis line. These are like more vintage inspired. A lot of people might know REVV from the high gain stuff that they do. That's sort of how they made their name. The Generator 120 is probably like the flagship amp that most people know REVV from. But REVV has recently, it's been a while now that they've been making amps in the Dynamis line. It kind of started with the D20, the little lunchbox type amp. These are like vintage amp inspired. So, you could kind of think of this as inspired by Fender type of amp circuits, maybe a bit of Marshall in the second channel as well. You can see it's a 2-channel amp. You got basically 2 rows of controls. You can switch the channels here on the front. You can switch them via a foot switch that's included when you purchase one of these. You can switch them via MIDI, which I do a lot when I use this amp live with like something like a Helix. There's a lot of stuff built into the back of the amplifier that sort of modernizes it. This is an all-tube amp, but you've got a 2-notes captor essentially just built into it. So you can run it direct with no cab at all. It doesn't hurt the amp. And you can have an XLR, a stereo XLR out and run stereo effects via the 2-notes software. You can load IRs in this thing and just run it straight into, a recording interface or something. There's a headphone out right here. Here's like you can store your virtual cabs. This is where you can recall up to 6 different preset IR settings. It has an effects loop built into it. You can run it at a full 40 watts or you can run it at 10 watts. That's in the back. There's reverb built into it. It's a digital reverb, digital spring type reverb. There's a boost and a bright switch. You've got depth and presence controls, and those are global, but then you've got like bass, middle, treble, gain, and level controls, and 2 master volumes, which you can assign to do different things. Talk about that in a bit too. And those are independent for each channel. And then you can save settings. Like this thing does a lot, and MIDI control it. So this really is a very modern amp with sort of a vintage soul to it. got my guitar plugged straight into the front. I am playing a PRS DGT semi-hollow for this section. I'm gonna go through each channel and just show you what it sounds like. I mentioned there's 2 master volumes, so you can assign both channels to master 1, so it's sort of a shared master. You can assign channel 2 to master 2 and channel 1 to master 1 if you'd like. It's all, you can do this all on the front of the amp itself. And so you can have different master volume settings for each channel, which could be handy if you're setting up, you know, the channels to get independent sounds. But for now, master 2 is not going to be used, so I'm going to leave it at 0. So master 1, I'm going to leave it about 8 o'clock there. And then you've got this volume control, which is going to introduce gain into the circuit as well as the gain control. So I find a good baseline, a really nice clean tone, is to keep the gain and the volume around 5. Let's set everything at noon. Before we start, I have this amp not plugged into this 2-rot cab. We're actually running it into a Mesa Boogie Lonestar 112 combo, but that Mesa Boogie has an Electro-Voice EVM-12L speaker, I believe is the name of the speaker. It's a speaker that gets commonly used with Dumble style amplifiers. We found it's a great match for this amp. It just sounds really big and warm. It's a 200 watt speaker, so you know it's very efficient. And this is what it sounds like, middle position of the DGT. So you can hear really digging in on a bridge humbucker. It's just starting to get this thing to break up at these settings. Let me split. The DGT in particular has really good like split sounds or tapped sounds, which is why I like to use it to demo something like this. Here you go. Now, when you're on the clean channel, you can introduce gain in one of 2 places. You can push the gain or you can push the volume. So let's kind of do it independently. Bridge humbucker. Personally, I find pushing the volume up kind of sounds better. In my opinion, on channel 1. So, you know, this is your clean channel. I like to set it so it's a little like edge of breakup kind of sound. So, you know, my preference would be to run gain here-ish with a humbucker guitar, volume around here. All right, so we're just starting to get a little breakup on the amp, and now I'm going to tweak the bass, middle, and treble so you can hear what that does. One thing I'll note right now, while I've got the middle sort of down, scooped, if you will, it does get like very black panel Fender type of sounds to me. So this is another one of those amps where the controls are all kind of right in the sweet spot. Like you're not getting just a ton of you know, sweep one way or another. Like running bass here and running bass here is not as big of a difference as it might be on some amps. But they're all just kind of right in the sweet spot. Like it all just kind of sounds good. You're just kind of, you know, moving stuff around just a little bit to dial it in for different guitars. There's a bright switch on channel 1. Let's engage that. You might have noticed that it got a little bit more, you know, gain in the circuit when that came on. It's actually really nice with a humbucker guitar. When I play this with single coils, I don't use the bright on channel 1. I do use it on channel 2. But for a humbucker guitar, I might turn it on and then pull the gain back a little bit to compensate. That's really nice. And then you've got a boost as well, and all of this can be foot switch or MIDI controlled with anything that controls MIDI. All right, before we move on to channel 2, let's see how much gain can we get out of here. Let's turn the boost off, push the gain and the volume up a little bit. Okay, it's starting to get pretty woolly and a little too fat for me with this guitar anyway. But you can hear there's a bit of gain that you can get out of channel 1. Like if this was all you got with this amp, it'd be a killer sounding amp. So, you know, let's go to channel 2. And it's going to kind of pick up where that left off. I'll show you, you can get a really nice like edge of breakup type of sound out of channel 2. I'll show you how I like to set that up. Again, let's turn our tone stack onto sort of neutral here. Volume is going to be straight up noon. Now the gain I've got at like 2, so this is pretty low. Again, same master volume is controlling it. So you can see it doesn't sound that different than where we had channel 1 sort of set. Actually, you can probably get them to sound pretty close. So it's like channel 2 is going to pick up there and you can go bigger. All right, so let's kind of wind it up, see what it does. Like I said, I like to turn the bright switch on in channel 2. Channel 2 to me is a bit darker, so I like to push the treble a little bit more. Let's just do this while we're here. Let's kind of mess with the tone stack. This is where I like to live on channel 2. So when I use this as a channel switching amp, channel 2 is really like a big rhythm tone for me. Channel 1 is going to be more, you know, my clean tone. So we're going to go from, you know, this. So it's a bit of a, you know, a lift gain and level wise. Okay, so you can hear, you could get like a solo tone out of that with the boost on, but like I said, this is kind of where I like to leave it. One thing we didn't look at yet is the depth and the presence. Let's go back to channel 1, a bit of a cleaner tone. One thing before we move on, I mentioned you can run this at 10 watts instead of 40. There's a switch on the back, so I'm going to play, and then I'm going to run it at 10 and show you what that sounds like. You're going to hear a drop in level, but then I'm going to keep playing, and I'm just going to bring the level up in post so you can kind of compare. It gets a lot quieter, but does the tone change? That's the question. So it's really useful if you need to be a lot quieter. Now, of course, if you want to be silent, you can just run IRs and plug some headphones into it. This thing can do a lot. All right, so speaking of all that digital stuff that's built into it, we did a video a while back on what I called hybrid rigs. It's using tube amps with digital modeling devices like a Helix. So in that video, I used a D40. It was a different D40, but I used a D40 and used it with my Helix, and I MIDI controlled the whole thing from the Helix, switching channels. So I was using the direct out from the 2 notes output. So here's a few examples of what that kind of rig sounds like with a D40, a green one.
REVV has been known as a high gain amp company. Like, they make amps that have dirt sounds, and they happen to have clean channels. But the D40 kind of lives in the middle. The D40 is like the culmination of both ends of the REVV spectrum put into one. You got this really big, round, clean tone, which really kind of gives some Dumble vibes. And I say that more because there's a lot of high headroom. The amp doesn't break up, you know, like the whole thing does. You kind of get some like hair around the outside of your tone as you start gaining it up. And then as you do gain it up, you can get something in like a ODS territory. You know, I've played a 2-Rock TS1 pretty extensively, and enough to say like it does remind me of that. I think it really says something when you got a guy like Dann Huff. He's well known, an incredible session player. He has a lot of gear that he's collected over his years, or he has access to just about anything he could possibly want. And he loves the D40. Now, this is what I've seen in some videos, so, you know, I'm just going off of that. But it makes sense. This amp gives you a lot of different things, and I really think if you were looking for an amp that, you know, especially in this day and age, people want to have that vintage, traditional guitar tone. You know, I don't say that in a way that everybody wants to sound the same, but like you want like traditional technology, vintage technology, but you want it to be modernized without completely neutering the experience of playing it. Like REVV is really doing that. There aren't many amp companies that I know of at least doing that, right? REVV is doing a great job of creating products that marry futuristic technology, the technology we've seen developed over the years, while still giving us those sounds. Now, in that vein, wow, what a transition. This is cool. And I probably just ruined it by saying that, but this was not planned. In that vein, Brian and I are utilizing technology so that you can hear me play through the amp. So I'm plugged into Logic. I'm using a Tonex plugin, which if I turn it off, it's just going to give a direct sound. So I'm using some of our captures loaded into the Tonex plugin. And when we make captures of amps, we write notes. We write down how we set the whole amp up, how things are EQ'd. All that stuff, so we can refer back. So if you ever have to redo anything, we don't have to completely start over. Like, we've already worked through the gain staging of the captures we offer, all of that. And so I'm recording this. I can hear the capture, so I know how it sounds. Brian's going to take this and turn off the plugin. He's going to reamp it into the D40, and you're going to hear me playing the amp in North Carolina, but the amp's in Birmingham.
So this is Derek Eastveld. Derek, what's your role at REVV? You've been on the channel before, so people may know you.
Yeah, my official title is the VP of Sales and Marketing, but I'm one of the main owners at REVV. Essentially, I general manage the company.
Bradford and I both, I think, kind of talk a bit about this in this video, but when I think of REVV, I mean, would you agree that you guys are mostly known for high gain amps, like the generator?
Yeah. Okay. Dan's first amp that he designed, and when him and I met, it was he had designed the generator 120, and he brought it to me. I owned a screen printing company, and he brought it to me needing somebody to screen print like the faceplates on the front of the amp. And I tried it and loved it, and told him he could build me one, and then started talking to him about possibly partnering up and how he was gonna build them. So so that's where it started, and the Dynamis series was born a little bit out of the generator, and me talking to him about like the fact that the clean channel on the generator was like shockingly good for a high gain amp, and that I said if you warmed it up a little bit, like it would be really good for like the house of worship market, because my brother's a pastor, so I grew up playing guitar in church. And I said, man, if this was just a little bit warmer, like it takes pedals pretty well, if it was a little warmer, this would be great for that market. So he started working on what became the Dynamis after that. It started out more as like, what is the clean channel that we would want, especially like what I would want to use in the worship market, or what the guys that I was friends with in the country market would want. So we took feedback from a lot of different players to see what they wanted. Now the original Dynamis, which you've never played one, I don't think. So there was an amp called the Dynamis 740. Its second channel is like pretty high gain, like it fits in. It's not a generator voicing, but it fits in that kind of family and class. And Sean Tubbs was working with us, and he had said, man, he's like, I like the Dynamis, but the second channel is too modern. We need something that's more vintage inspired. So when we sat down to develop the D40, because the D40 was going to be the first like bigger amplifier in the Dynamis line that had the reactive load and the 2 notes IR loading in it. So when we sat down to do that, it was me, Sean, and Dan sitting down talking about like what should it be, and Sean had the most influence over what the voicings on both channels should be.
What would you say the D40 is inspired? Because I mean, the clickbait title of this video probably is did you guys build a modern Dumble, right? So yeah, that word is I don't know if you want to I don't know if Rev wants to associate yourself with that word, but what I've heard people say that it gives them that kind of a vibe, and I kind of feel that way. What do you guys think?
The goal was to capture the sound that all of us kind of have in our heads of what we want. So it wasn't like it was modeled after anything. It was, again, like I found like Fender cleans have always been like kind of what I've gravitated towards. I'm way more of an American voiced clean channel guy than I am British voiced. I find the Vox stuff to be really toppy, and find it really hard to play an AC30. But there's things about the American voice that I didn't like, like the low end is like normally way too boomy. If you could find a way to make a clean channel, tighter but not feeling stiff, right? So adding more mid-range, and Dan's really great at taking, voices that I feel are kind of American voiced style products, whether it's in high gain or in, cleans and low to gain stuff. But then applying a similar EQ to how British amps are EQ'd, because those are really the things that I see as the major differences as a guitar player that's not an engineer. It's interesting that you think it sounds Dumble-y, because like Dann Huff and a lot of the guys that are like the bigger players who have adopted it will say like, oh, it's way more like my Matchless, like it's like my DC30. You know, so it's leaning more towards the Vox thing. I've been fortunate to play, you know, a number of real Dumbles, and they're all different. I've played one that wasn't really stiff. Almost all of them are pretty stiff and sterile. So they're not really nice to play, where I feel like all of the Dynamis series stuff has a good balance of like top end kind of bite and chime, but still feels good to play. Like you're not going to sit down and feel like you're fighting your amp.
Yeah. I'm reading between the lines and I'm hearing you say, Derek, you saying, don't put that on me. No, I don't like those. I don't like those Dumble amps. Ours sound better.
No, I will be honest. I've played one Dumble that I thought was one of the best amps I've ever played in the world.
Yeah.
And I've played about 6 of them that if it was a blind shootout, I wouldn't pay $2,000 to buy.
Well, you brought up Dann Huff, and I know I have really been into his instrumental album. What's it called? Words Aren't Enough or something like that?
When Words Aren't Enough.
Yeah. If you're watching, go check it out. It's on all the streaming platforms now. It wasn't originally. You had to buy it. Yeah. And I did, and man, it's good. And he recorded most of that with a D40 from what I understand, right?
Yeah, so that was a bit of a trip because I sent the amp over to him. He had a Generator 120 and had been using it on, you know, he would send me a text being like, hey, thanks again for lending me this amp. I use it on the new Thomas Rhett single. That green channel was the right thing for it. So thanks again for letting me borrow it. And, you know, getting texts like that, it's just, you know, it's surreal, right? Because it's one of your guitar heroes that you're like, this guy's texting me and he's using something that we built. And when we built the D40, I told Sean, I was like, man, I think Dann Huff would love this, especially because I know he, you know, loves the DC30 that he has. So I had Sean take one over to him, and then I forgot about it for like 6 months, and I messaged him. His brother had messaged me asking about an amp, and I messaged Dan just say, hey, I forgot to check in what you think of that amp. He's like, oh, it's fantastic. I'd love to buy it from you. And I was like, wow, I'm like, this is awesome. When he started doing his record, I get this voice note, and it's essentially saying like, hey, Derek, you know, I'm working on this new record, and, you know, I recorded all of the demo tracks with the D40 when I was writing it. And he's like, and when I went back to retrack all the guitars with other amps, he's like, none of the feel was right. Everything seemed kind of off. And he said, so in the end, he's like, about 95% of the record is the original demo tracks. And, you know, he's like, I go punch in a few things here and there, or, you know, do a new solo or whatever. But he's like, 95% of them are the D40. And he said, you know, when it comes out, if you guys would like to use me as like a spokesperson for your brand or anything, I would be, you know, I would be thrilled to do that for you. Yeah. And I'm listening to this in my office, like looking at my phone, being like, what? Like this doesn't happen. I tried for 5 or 6 straight years just to get an amp to Dann Huff to get him to try with no success.
Wow.
Yep. And it was Rich Rankin at James Tyler that Rich called me with, he needed some sort of advice on something or just wanted an opinion on something. He called me, and I think it was sometime after he had done NAMM with us, and he says, is there anything I can do for you? And as a joke, I said, well, if you want to give me Dann Huff's number, connect me to Dann Huff, that'd be great. And he was like, oh, yeah, sure, no problem. To have him come out and be like, yeah, I would love to, you know, I'm using the amp constantly, so, and I used it on this record, so I would love to be a spokesperson for you if you want that, was unbelievably surreal.
I saw him talk about how he has that old Matchless DC30 or C30, and the C30 is also my all-time favorite amp. And so and when he said that you know, this D40 is, he didn't say it sounds just like it, but he said
no.
It's something that I would use if my C30 went down. This is what, basically that's what he kind of said. It's like, you know, he's like, that C30 is one of the first ones they ever made. And what happens if it dies? What am I going to do? And he's like, now I got something. And I think that's when I emailed you and I was like, hey, can I buy a D40? Because now I have to try this thing. And so maybe, and it, you know, it's interesting how it is similar in a way that channel 1 can go really clean to pretty overdriven. And channel 2 can actually, it'll kind of pick up on that edge of breakup sound.
Yep.
And then in almost kind of the same way the C30 on the 12AX7 is clean, and then the EF86 is like a little more aggressive, a little more, you know, a little higher gain in that. So it's similar in that respect too. But man, you guys, it's a pretty special sounding amp. I've been using it a lot live. It's awesome. A lot of fun. Yeah.
Thank you. If you haven't checked it out, or if you know, if you're watching this and you only know Rev from the generator stuff like the G3 and the G4 pedal, I would just encourage you to check out, like, especially the D20 Mark II or the D40, like either of those amps, because there's kind of another side to our company that a lot of people don't realize until, you know, years down the line. I mean, I had somebody mention to me that, like, man, it's really great that you guys are finally starting to do something, you know, a little more in the mid-gain range. And this was like literally like a few months ago or a month and a bit ago, like at NAMM, and I was like, yeah, we've been doing it for about 9 years now, but right. Like we're just getting into it.
One thing I love about you guys is that, I mean, I have the black Western like Paisley Tolex.
Yep.
You can completely customize out your amp, right? And it doesn't cost. It costs maybe a little bit more than buying the stock look? Is that right?
Yeah, so typically it's about $125 to do custom Tolex, but we do have a deal that if you're buying through any of our retailers instead of direct from us, if you call your retailer, there's a good chance that, you know, we have a program for them that it'll be quite a bit cheaper, or maybe it won't cost you. I maybe didn't say that, you know, because we really do try to encourage people, like, go buy from your local guitar shop.
And the pricing is really, I mean, it's all made, it's like the D40 is made in Canada. It's not like, you know, you're not importing it, and it's high quality stuff. And so I just think it's a really cool thing. Like, it's not often you can completely customize and get that high end of a product for this price point. So
I mean, for us, like, it's not like we're building, you know, we're not Marshall or Mesa Boogie. We're not building 1,000 amps a month or anything like that, right? So it's not disrupting our production horrifically. If it's like, okay, you did 10 head shells in a row that were black, now you got to do a purple one. Like, that's not gonna make a huge difference to us, you know? It just means the guy cutting Tolex has to load the, you know, the purple roll to cut one.
In.
Yeah, that's all. So, and I've always loved that idea. Like, you know, back to when we used to have the acrylic faceplates in our amps, and you could customize and put like a logo in it, so that when it lit up, it had your name in it or had your band logo or whatever.
Cool. Yeah.
I just always thought that was like a nice touch, because, you know, we want our product to be kind of a forever amp for you. So you might as well have something that every time you look at it, you look at it and go, man, that's awesome.
This just a bit, and we talked about this up front, and it's probably in the thumbnail. Did Rev build like a modern day Dumble style amplifier, or a modern day Dumble? You know, Dumble amps, from what I understand, Dumble would build an amp to a player. So no two Dumbles are really exactly the same. He did sort of have like these models that he would make, the Overdrive Special, the Steel String Singer. You know, there's the HRM mod, the hot rubber monkey or whatever, the hot rod and Marshall kind of a thing, whatever they call it. And so you get these sort of distinct sounds from Dumble style amps. The other thing about Dumbles is like, who's actually played one? But I have, you know, a 2-Rock TS1, which is 2-Rock's clone of an overdrive special. We have all kinds of digital emulations of them in anything like the Helix. You know, Line 6 has models of Dumble style amps. Fractal has models of actual Dumbles. I think Robin Ford's Dumble is in there. You've got the Enigmatic pedal from UA. You've got the John Mayer plugin, has Dumble type stuff in it. So we can experience what a Dumble amp probably sounds like in the digital realm. And, you know, having done that a lot and sort of explored those kinds of digital emulations and captures, there's some things about the D40 that really make us think like it sounds a bit like that. So one of those things is just this big, beautiful, warm, clean tone. So a lot of Dumbles are like, you know, really, really high headroom, high wattage Fender type amps. And so I'm hearing that a bit from channel 1. Another thing that we hear a lot from Dumble style amps is what you would think of as the overdrive special, you know, the overdriven sound that they're capable of. And it's this very warm, harmonically rich overdrive sound. So I don't think Rev necessarily set out to build a modern day Dumble, but I think they've built something that is special in the way Dumble style amplifiers are special. And this thing is just such a joy to play. I have really loved getting to play through this amp, and I've been using it live a lot with that hybrid rig that you just saw. I use it live a lot to play, you know, in church on Sundays. These things take pedals really, really well, which you've heard throughout this video. They're great, you know, so the pedal platform thing, it works really well, but they're great too as like you want one amp to get you your clean tone and then hop to the drive channel for your rhythm tone, put all your wet effects after it. The 2 notes direct out allows you to do that much easier than you can with a lot of different amplifiers as well. So Rev's really got something special with the D40, but they have a lot of really great stuff. Like if you want a smaller version, they have a D20, they have a D25. They've got some Joey Landreth signature stuff. There's a Joey D25, I believe, that's revoiced a little bit. Those are all really fantastic amplifiers. We're huge fans of Rev. We love them as a company. We love the people there. We hang out with them every year at NAMM. They're just great. And their amps and pedals and stuff are fantastic. You heard a Rev G2 pedal in this demo as well. Sounds great with the D40. Hey, again, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.